session on making spreadsheets accessible. This event is taking place as part of Analysis in Government Month. This is just one of many activities happening across government this month. There's still some more sessions happening this week, so to find out more and connect with your community, please visit gov.uk/government analysis function. You can also subscribe to our channel on YouTube and follow us on Twitter with the handle @gov_analysis. Just to let you know, this session is being recorded. Please use the Q&A function to ask any questions you have, and we'll read those out at the end. Please also vote for your favourite questions, as this will determine the order we go through them in. So I'll now pass over to our presenter for this session, Hannah Thomas.
Hello, thank you, Louise. Oh yeah, okay. I need to share. Yeah, I do want to share. So I'm just going to share my screen, and hopefully you'll all be able to see this. Aim, can you give me a nod if that's working? No, it's not working.
Not yet, no.
Okay, that's going to be an issue. That doesn't work. Let's try again. Okay, let's try again. Yeah. Is that working?
Yeah, we've got you.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So this is making spreadsheets accessible. It's one of my accessibility demonstrations. We're hoping to make these a bit more regular. So if you've got any things at the end you think you'd maybe like me to look at in one of these demos, then feel free to contact me about that. We're hoping to make them a sort of monthly event maybe. And so yeah, let's get into what we're going to do today. So my name is Hannah Thomas, and I am from the Best Practice and Impact Division, and we're here to help the government analysis function. And it won't let me move on my page. I don't know why. Let's try. Okay. Okay, so I'm the web dissemination lead for the government analysis function. And hopefully you all know what the government analysis function is. Now, in case you don't, it's just basically all the analysts who work in government or anyone who works with analysis in government. So because I'm the web dissemination lead, the thing I've been concentrating on the most in the last year is online accessibility. And I've researched and written guidance on making publications accessible, and that's already published and up on the GSS website. And now I've moved on to looking at making spreadsheets accessible, and there will be an update to the releasing statistics in spreadsheets guidance on the GSS website when that all gets signed off. So still currently in a little bit of draft form, which has got to be signed off by a certain committee, and we're just waiting for that to happen. So the guidance related to this demo isn't currently on the GSS website, but there is a link to it, which is currently still on the Best Practice and Impact GitHub. So you can look at the guidance related to this demonstration. This follows the accessibility legislation, which aligns to, if you haven't heard of it before, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which are shortened to WCAG 2.1. So the accessibility legislation basically says that all public sector outputs online must meet the AA standard of the WCAG 2.1. And that's why I've been working on so much of this guidance. And the aim of this demo is to help the implementation of the guidance, and hopefully it will help you do that. And like I said, I'm happy to take questions and comments at the end of the session. So just a couple of other things. I wouldn't class myself as an accessibility expert. It's a massive topic, and I'm not certainly, I think I probably am as informed as I can be about spreadsheets now, but I wouldn't say overall I was an accessibility expert. If you know of a better way of doing something, if in terms of accessibility or in terms of Excel, because I wouldn't say I'm an Excel expert either, then please let me know. And you can email me, I see, I changed that now last minute before and there's a typo in it, which is annoying, but you can find me on Slack or Twitter. So there's my email address and my Twitter handle and my Slack handle. So I'll put them up at the end as well if you're interested in contacting me after this demo. So let's start then. We're going to go on to this one. So this is the spreadsheet we're going to be looking at, and I'm going to basically be showing you how we would apply the guidance I've written about making spreadsheets accessible, how we'd apply it to a spreadsheet like this. And as you can see, this is a baby names spreadsheet. So it shows you the top 100 baby names for baby boys in 2019. And it basically shows you them in rank. So from the most popular, the number 1, down to the 100th most popular, which is down there. Luke. The number 1 was Oliver, number 100 was Luke. So it's showing you the baby names rankings for boys. And I haven't picked this. It's nothing to do with this being particularly inaccessible or particularly bad example of a spreadsheet. It's nothing to do with that. It's just that I like baby names. I've got 2 little boys, so baby boy names were of big interest to me for a few years. And it's easy to understand this data, and it kind of brings up a few nice accessibility issues to discuss. So just to put that out there, it's nothing to do with this being a particularly bad spreadsheet that I've picked on. So if you make a start with it then, you can see the first thing to start with is cell A1, which is the kind of the most important cell in a spreadsheet in terms of accessibility. It's the first one a screen reader will read out. It'll read out whatever's in cell A1. That's the first one it reads out. If you use keyboard navigation only, you'll always navigate down from cell A1. So it's really important that we put something in there that tells us immediately what this spreadsheet is about. So having contents in there and hyperlink back to the contents, because this sheet is taken from a larger spreadsheet, it's got about 8 tabs in it. That's useful, having a hyperlink back to the contents tab, but it's not really great to have it in cell A1, because then the screen reader will just read out contents, and then the person might not know, or have to go down to then read out what the actual worksheet is called. So they won't know that. So it's just not a great thing to have in cell A1 there. So we're just going to move that. So I'm just going to get rid of it. It is a nice thing to have, but it's not essential for accessibility to have the hyperlink back to the contents, and we'll talk about that a little bit why in a minute. So there, now in cell A1 now, it says table 1, top 100 names for baby boys 2019. So that tells me straight away exactly what this worksheet is about. So that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that title. They've put England and Wales underneath, they put the geography information underneath, which isn't really the best thing to do, because we want it to all be in one place. Generally in stats we say describe the data, then put the geographical information, then put the year. That's generally the way stuff goes. So I'm just going to move it up into there, and that also means now the screen reader will read all that out in one go. That's just annoying me because my headset lead is in the wrong place. There you go. So and then another thing we've got in here, so I can delete that now, sorry. So let's delete that for now. Let's leave one row there in a minute. So we can see we've got the superscript 1 here. So it shows the superscript here, it doesn't here. And this is the way, what's in the formula bar, this is the way the screen reader will read it out. It'll read out top 100 names for baby boys 1, England and Wales 2019. It doesn't know it's a superscript. So generally we don't advise to use superscript to mark out notes now in this guidance, because as I just said, screen readers can't read them, and also they're quite hard to see if you're scanning for one thing, and also if you've got low vision or other visual impairments, then they're quite difficult to see because they're quite small. So now what we'd advise is put note markers at the end and put them in square brackets. And the square brackets thing is basically because that's better for machine readability. If a programmer needs to adapt a spreadsheet to be machine readable, having them in square brackets makes that easier. I'm not 100% sure why, but it does. And also it makes the notes easier to spot. And now because we've written the word note, it's really obvious. So if the screen reader reads that out, table 1, top 100 names for baby boys, England and Wales 2019, note 1. It's really clear that's a note. It's not just a stray sort of number that's been put in to that cell. So that's just makes that a little bit more obvious. So I'm going to leave that there now. And the next thing we need to do is to mark this up as a heading. So sort of on all HTML pages and on Word documents and basically any sort of content, it's really good to mark up headings, to tag them as what sort of level heading they are. So because this is the main heading of this worksheet, we're going to tag it as a headings 1. So you might not know, but you can do this in Excel. So I didn't know before I started looking into this that this is possible, but you can do this in Excel. It's pretty similar to the way you do it on Word, really. So you go to cell styles and then we go to heading 1. And as you see, it changes the formatting, but now it has tagged this as a level 1 heading, which is really useful for screen readers and other things that need assistive technology. It marks it out as the heading of the worksheet. So unfortunately, though, it gives it a bit of a, not the best formatting for accessibility. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to select automatic color. Now the automatic color is important because if I just select black, it's different to selecting automatic. So if I select automatic, what that means is if someone's got certain spreadsheet software or just generally on their device, they might have settings that open content with certain colors set in place, and that the colors they can read, because some people can't read black on white because it's too much of a glare. Depending on their needs. So they have settings that say, oh, turn all the font color into this certain blue color and turn the background color into this certain beige color, and that means they can read it. If we set it as automatic, then if you haven't got any special settings set up, it'll come up as black and white as long as you've got no fill on the background. But if you select and then if you've got settings, it'll take them on. If you select black and put like if you select black text and put a background fill of all white, then it won't be able to take on a person's settings and they might not be able to read it. So I know it's quite a long-winded explanation of that, but that's the reason why it's good to select automatic and not black. And another thing, this it automatically puts this cell border on. So we don't really want cell borders because it underlines the text, and that can make text more difficult to read, especially for people with dyslexia. So I'm going to take the border off that as well. So now I've got my heading, it's tagged as a heading. I've got automatic color, it's not underlined, so it's got the note in the right way. So now we're pretty happy with the heading as it is there. Then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to put something in what I advised on the guidance is that to put something in the cell A2 that sort of tells the user what is on this spreadsheet. So on this spreadsheet is, what am I doing? I'll change this a second. So I'm just going to put like an illustrative sentence that says what's on the spreadsheet. So on this spreadsheet is, what's it there? This worksheet contains one, oh, it is going to be one table in a second. So one table, this worksheet contains one table. Some cells refer to notes which can be found on the notes worksheet. Talk about that in a second. I'm just going to put that in there for now. So it's just giving a heads up as to what is in this, what they might find in this worksheet. So so that can be helpful, and that's helpful not just for people using assistive technology, it's kind of helpful for all users because it gives them a heads up. Because sometimes we have tables that are like lots of tables underneath each other. So it's good to know there's only one table on this worksheet, and it's good to know, okay, the notes that are mentioned, where I can find them, so I can find them on the notes worksheet. So it's just a really useful thing to do, to put a bit of illustrative sentence in there. Okay, so let's get on to the tables now. So they've chosen to put sort of two tables alongside each other. So places 1 to 50 and then places 51 to 100. And this might be easier because maybe it's easy to scroll through the top 100 and you see more things at one time. But it's not the best for machine readability or for accessibility because it's hard. If you're a sighted user, then it's quite easy to see what's going on. But if you're not a sighted user, it's quite difficult to work out this sort of layout. So, and like I said, for machine readability as well, it's also not the best thing because you've got to like program, you've got to write that into the program and it makes it more complicated. So what I'm going to do, first of all, if I look below the table, I'm going to move these into here for now, which out of the way. And then I'm going to delete these rows just for now. And then I'm just going to make this one table. So I'm going to copy this and put it under here. And then I'm going to just delete these ones. And then there's just a bit of style border going on here. Get rid of that. With the cell borders, they're not, in the guidance I said avoid using them. So they don't necessarily fail any sort of accessibility regulations, but if they're overused, they can make things really difficult for people to read, even if you haven't got any assistive technology needs or anything like that. They can just make things a bit difficult to read. So we try to say, oh, we don't overuse them. But really, if you don't put a background fill on, you've already got these grid lines in. I don't know, it's debatable whether you need them or not. So it's fine to have them on the outside of the table to mark out the outline. That's okay. So I don't need this one now either, so I'm just going to delete that row. And if you want to space things out, first of all, I've got to fix this. So these are all merged cells for some reason. We can't have merged cells. And I know this is going to cause an issue for some people in stats because they're used quite a lot. And I have tried to find a way around them and tried to find a way that we can use merged cells and make it accessible and fine for machines to read. But it just doesn't seem to be doable at all because they just can't understand the technology that reads the spreadsheet, whether it's for machine reading or for assistive tech purposes. It can't understand the merged cells. It's really difficult to sort of work out what's going on. So we need to stop using merged cells. So I'm going to unmerge them all. And in this one, I wasn't even sure I really had them in this one because there's no, I don't know, it must be an old formatting thing that was in there. So this one's quite easy. So we just need to take them out. And then just use the row height and to get all the text in there. The text is already still wrapped. So you can see all the text from each column heading. So that's fine now. I was going to say the other thing is, if you don't want everything sort of clustered up here, like the heading and the sentence and stuff, just use the sort of row height and some of the move it up there, sort of space things out a bit if you feel like it's sort of too clustered together. That can help, yeah. So I think that's all I want to say there. So now a couple of things to fix with the table. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to make this a table. So I need to tell, at the moment, because I'm a sighted user, I can see this is the table and I can understand how long it is and everything, and I can see that. But if I'm not a sighted user, it's really difficult to see that that's a table. Like I don't know how wide it is, I don't know how long it is, I can't really figure out what's going on with the table, I don't know where it ends. You can see if I tab across now, like I know, okay, that's the end of the row and I need to go to the next row. But if you're not a sighted user, how do you know that's the end? And especially in stats, we have sort of like the original one of this had a sort of blank column in the middle of the two tables. So it's just difficult, you know. You need to tell the screen reader technology or any other assistive tech that this is the table. And the way we do that is we select all the cells in the table and we go to insert and we select table. And we make sure my table as headers is selected. And then we change it and it gives us this horrible formatting. So we're just going to take that off and it makes every column a filter for some reason. So we're also going to take that off because we don't really need that. So now, well, the difference is it doesn't look much different. It does stretch out these columns. So I'm just going to move them back. But it doesn't look much different to us maybe. But what it means now is that the screen reader knows this is the header row. The screen reader also knows, even the tab technology also knows that, oh, I'm at the end of this row, so I'll go down to the next one. So it tabs through in a sensible order. If you've got a screen reader, it should say something that when it gets to this one, it'll say edge of table. It should also have the technology that available. So if I'm right down here and I've forgotten what column I'm in, I should be able to sort of do something, some sort of command on the screen reader, and it'll tell me what column I'm in. Because you can imagine when there's lots and lots of columns, it's quite hard to remember what column you're in and which bit of data you're looking at. So there's lots of really good reasons why we want to tag things as tables and mark them up properly as tables so that technology can recognize it as a table. And the other thing that's good about it is we get this design tab now. So if I click into the table, I get this design tab and it gives it a name. So you want to give it a meaningful name. So you want to put like baby boy names, or you want to put top 100, and we have to put underscores in between each word for these. So top 100 baby boy names 2019. That's basically the name of the table, the title there. But what this means is then if I do Control G, it gives it this go to tool. And now every table that I mark up and give a name will be listed in here. So that acts like an automatic table of contents. So what I was saying about the hyperlink back to the table of contents, that is useful. But the more people are sort of aware of this sort of tool instead, and if everything's marked up, then they'll all be in there listed for them anyway. So yeah, and more people who use assistive tech are more aware of these sort of shortcuts, these sort of tools, than maybe if you've never used assistive technology. So it's just really good to name them all and to mark them all up and to make sure they're all listed in that go-to tool. Okay, so now it knows it's a table. What should we do next? Okay, so it's fine to leave this as bold. You can leave the ranks as bold as well if you want. You want to try, let's try and just make sure that all these colors here, they're all automatic. Yeah, all that text. I'm going to talk about the colors on this side in a second. But all the text that's black should be automatic and not black. So just check that. So that's fine. You can leave everything bold. There's nothing, you know, you don't want to overuse bold, but it's fine to leave that as it is there. If that's the way you want to leave it formatted. I'm going to just change the superscript, like we said. I'm just going to call it square brackets note 2. Because there's a note related to that. You might want to put that Alt Enter and it'll go underneath, which might make it a bit, make that a bit smaller again. Generally, the ones with data in, we're going to right align them. So they're right aligned over the data, and all the data is right aligned. And then these ones are kind of like the row labels sort of thing. So they're gonna be left aligned. So that's where they all are. They're all done like that already. So that's fine. And then let's see. So headings are all good. That's okay. So let's go to this column then. So it's not great to have everything in capitals. It's better to have things in sentence case where they have a capital letter for proper nouns and for the start of the sentence. So these are all names. So we're going to leave the first letter capital, but we're going to put the rest in lowercase. And there is a nice little formula for this. So if I do that there, you can see it puts it in that sort of sentence case thing. And then I'm just going to drag that down to get all of them. So this is nicer, it's easier to read. People with dyslexia find full caps a bit more difficult to read. And then just in general, I just think for most people, capitals are harder to read than lowercase letters. So I'm just going to take that now, copy, and I'm going to put it in here. I'm going to paste just the values. Yeah, okay. And now I can just delete that one. So now this column's fine, this column's fine. This is fine. What we want to, like I said, it's right aligned, it's numbers, and they've got commas after to sort of denote the thousands. That's the way we want numbers to be listed. So that's all fine, that column's okay. So now we're going to look at these two columns here. So I don't think everything needs to be in bold. So I think I'm going to just take the bold off that one, just so you don't overuse the bold. So I'm just going to take that off there. And these are showing us the change in the rank since 2018. So the change in Oliver since its rank in 2018. So Oliver has stayed at number 1. It hasn't changed. And it's changing rank since 2009. So compared to what it was 2009, again, it hasn't changed. So I didn't realize that Oliver's been there for a long time. But that's what these two columns are showing us, the change in rank. So we've got when it hasn't changed, it's given a 0, and that 0 is left in, it should be automatic color, I think. Yeah, automatic, so that's fine. But when it's gone up, it's given a plus sign and it's put in blue. Now, the rules on the use of color are you cannot use color as the only way to communicate a message. So this is okay because the message here about it going up is communicated in 2 ways. It's communicated through the plus and through the colour. So we can argue, and it's the same for the ones that have fallen in rank. It's communicated through a minus sign and a colour. So here, the colour is used for emphasis, and that's okay. So the use of colour is okay here. We can use colour to emphasise what's gone up and what's gone down. So that's okay. But we do need to check the contrast of the colour against the background, because we need to make sure that people can see the actual text that's in there. And if the contrast doesn't meet certain standards, it might mean that some people can't see it. So this is how we do this. On the guidance, there's a section on this in use of colour. So this is the guidance there. This is where it lives at the moment and what it looks like. I can share the link to this after the session, along with sort of like a before and after of the spreadsheet we're looking at. It's stuff we can share after. Yeah, so checking text colour contrast is a section on here. You can use this web aim color contrast checker, so it lets you paste in the codes and check the contrast. But someone mentioned that it would be probably good if I shared a few text colors that work against a background of no fill. So all these meet the AA and the AAA level against a background with no fill on. So blue text with this RGB code. So there's two codes that colors can have, a hex code and RGB code. So blue text with this one, and I can tell you that this blue is that blue. So the blue is fine. But the red isn't. The red that's currently used on here isn't meeting the contrast standard. So we're going to have to change it. So the red we need is 17900. So this is a bit fiddly the way to change this one because it's done through conditional formatting. So I always manage to mess this bit up. So we'll see how this one goes. So oh, it's not coming up there. Let's see. Okay, so you can see these are the rules that are in place and this is the color that's used. So I'm going to leave the blue as it is because we know that's successful, that's meeting everything we need it to meet. So this one I need to edit it. So I'm going to edit the rule, format the color, and I need to change this color. I need to type in a new code. I think it might be that one, but I'm just going to show you just to type in the new code. So you can go to custom. So you can say this is 25500, which is kind of the opposite to the blue. But we don't want 255, we want 17900 for the red. So I'm just going to change that. 79, click OK. Where is it? Oh, is it? OK, OK. And I'm also going to do this one at the same time. So edit rule, format, and then it is there now. Recent colors and there. So OK, OK, apply. Okay, so now it's changed the red, so it's just made it a little bit darker, and now this red meets all the color contrast standards. So now the use of color in this is fine. So we can move on from that one. So the only thing that's left now is this asterisk that's used in some of these cells, and also the notes we moved into this one over here. So you can see that I said on this sheet, I said that this worksheet contains one table, which is what we've fixed here. Some cells refer to notes which can be found in the notes worksheet. So we don't now recommend that you put notes underneath the table. They can easily get missed. They can also be difficult to format. If you've got like lots of notes under each and every table, you're going to need to format the notes under each and every table. Which can be a bit fiddly, and a lot of them will need manual formatting, so they need proper subheadings and need to be make sure the text is correct and everything. So it can just be fiddly. So it's just a bit easier, and they're less likely to get lost and to be seen by everyone, even people using assistive technology, if they're on their own worksheet. So I'm going to call this the notes worksheet, and our advice now is to just put them all on one notes table on a notes worksheet. And then they can all be found in one place. And so then sometimes you'll have a situation where you have the same note under, say, 5 tables on your spreadsheet. And now if that note changes, you've got to go through and got to make sure you've edited the note in every single one. So with this situation, you don't need, with the new guidance, you don't need to change that once on your notes table. So it can be useful for other reasons as well. And I go into it a lot more in the guidance. There's a whole section on notes and footnotes and where's it gone? Oh, symbols, footnotes and codes. So there's lots of stuff on here about footnotes and where they should put them and stuff. So yeah, there's more advice on there for you. So what we're going to do now though is just make this a notes worksheet. So I'm going to give it the heading notes. I'm going to make sure that's marked up as a heading 1. Give it the automatic color. Take off the cell border. You can change the default settings, so this is much faster than doing it like this. And then I'm just going to put in, I'm going to move that over there. Oh, okay, and just make this a 1. And wrap this off. Do the same for this one. So move this into here. Because it's merged. Take it off. Yeah, paste that. The 2. As you can see, number 2, the note for number 2 actually, it doesn't make sense for this one now because I've taken off the other tables, but we're going to leave it there because it is a valid note, it's just not for this table. Give it a heading, so note number, note text, format that the same. And just going to make this now a bit easier to read. Just widen that and then wrap the text. So it makes the note a little bit easier to read. You don't want it spread out over there because it's quite difficult to horizontally scroll along to read something. And yeah, do it like that. And then again, I'm going to insert this and make it a proper table. And then annoyingly, again, you can change your default settings to make this faster, changing the formatting faster. So now I've got a notes table. Remember to give it a name in there. So again, if I do the go-to tool now, I've got the name of my table and I've got the notes table in there as well, so I can get to it quite easily. So now my two notes are in here. And just a note on the sort of font we want to use. So we just want to make sure we're using a sans serif font. So this is fine because it says Arial. So that means the serif are the little markings you get around the letters. So you get on like things like Times New Roman. So we want to make sure we're using a sans serif font, and we want to make sure it's automatic color. You don't really want to use italics. They can make things difficult to read. You don't really use underline. We want to make sure if you've got any hyperlinks, they're embedded properly. So all of that is covered in the guidance and also in the other guidance on making analytical, click the wrong thing, making analytical publications accessible. So all that's on there, available in the guidance, but the kind of things you want to think about with the written content of a spreadsheet. Okay, so we've also got this thing now where the asterisk means it denotes a new entry into the top 100. Actually, before we go into the asterisks, let's just deal with these two bits here. So this is source. So if I don't think you necessarily need to say this on every tab of a spreadsheet. If the source is different on every different table you've got, then it's probably worth putting that in each tab. If the source for all your tables is the same, you can just put that on a cover sheet. You don't necessarily need to put it on each individual worksheet. But if you do, then we don't want to put stuff below the table where it's more easily going to get missed. We want to put it at the top. So I'm just going to put that up here. And also same with this one. I mean, if your whole spreadsheet is released on the 26th of August 2020, then just put that on the cover sheet, and you might want to put in like when the next update is due. You don't need to put that on every table unless your tables get updated for all slightly different times or were published at slightly different times. So I'm for this one, I'm just going to put them. I'm just going to put them in here. I want to get that because it'll paste it across the row. Let's insert the row first. So I'm going to put it in there because maybe it's important for this one, but just in general to be aware, you can just put them on a cover sheet. And then I'm going to just now move it down. Okay, I'm just going to leave it like that for now. Can move that kind of away from it there. So I've got all that information there that was there anyway, if I think it's important to put it there. And then the last thing before I go on to the asterisks, I'm just going to look at is they've got freeze panes on, which is fine, and then it means that the column headings stay there. If you look at it now, another thing I forgot to mention when you do a table, and it always takes a little while to pick this up. I think it's because, okay, so because if I take freeze panes off now, so unfreeze them. Yeah, so what you can see now, where it is now, because it's marked up as a table and it knows this is the header row, it changes the actual names of the column. So instead of being A, B, C, D, E, it changes it to what is in the header row. So it sort of automatically freezes the panes for you. So it depends on the length of your heading. Like you could stretch that out, and then so that the whole heading would show as you scroll down. And then they would all be there. And they don't really need to freeze panes then because they're all there. If you don't want to do that because you want the columns to be a bit narrower, then you can freeze panes. So you can put that back in if you want. I think I always get this wrong. I'm going to highlight this row. Yeah, so you can freeze panes like they were on there. But if you do that, it can make things very difficult. Because if you've got someone with low vision who needs to zoom in quite far to be able to see the spreadsheet, if I've got freeze panes now, it really limits what I can see. And if, like I just showed you, if it's marked up properly, then it'll come up in those column headings up here anyway. So this is just getting in my way. It's just, you know, the freeze panes is annoying. So yeah, just be wary when you use them. It depends on your table what that looks like. That might be an issue for people. And it can also sort of just get in the way of navigation as well. So you can use them if you want to. Just have a little think about whether you need to. And if you do use them, it's good to say that they're turned on and how to switch them off, and how to switch them off using just the keyboard, because it may be that someone doesn't use a mouse. So tell them to go to the view ribbon and unfreeze panes. They might not be like, well, I know I don't use the mouse and the cursor. I need a keyboard option. So it is in here as well. And I've got the sentence you should really put in. So freeze panes are turned on. To turn freeze panes, turn off freeze panes, select the view ribbons, freeze panes, or use Alt WF, and that's the keyboard shortcut to turn them off. So just put that bit of text in there. Let's make it look the same. Just like I said, just tell them it's there and how to turn them off. So that's fine now. And so now the last bit then is this asterisk. So this asterisk is denoting a new entry to top 100. So we can't use symbols, maybe like we've been advising people to use them, because like again, this is difficult to see for someone with low vision. It's also sometimes certain symbols will get ignored by screen readers, or they might have their settings switched off to avoid like auditory clutter, reading out too many symbols. So it might not get read out, it might be ignored, and it might also be difficult for people to see. So there's lots of reasons why we can't really use asterisks or other symbols anymore. So we need to find other ways of communicating that information. So for this one, it's a bit of a strange table. It's very specific to this example of what my solution in this case would be. In a general case where you need to use something to mark out a specific cell, what we sort of say in the guidance now is to make this one a notes column, and then put in here what the note is and what cells it refers to. So you would say like, oh, this is note 3, and then make sure you've got everything in square brackets again. Say this note refers to cell E24. You know, when you've just got like one specific cell thing. So I know there will be instances, I have looked at other examples where this approach might not work because it's just going to be so manual and it just won't work. But in a situation where you've got a table and there's just maybe 2 or 3 cells that need a note attached, this is kind of the best option we've got. Before we used to say, or add in like a tiny column and then put a little symbol in that column to sort of separate it out from the data. But we can't really advise to do that anymore because it creates loads of these extra columns, and they each need a heading. If you mark up a table as a table properly, if you don't put a column heading in, it'll just name it column 1, column 2, column 3, whatever. So if you have these really little narrow columns that you sort of used to be the advice, and sort of I see in a lot of examples sent to me, they're not meeting the accessibility regs. And also I've been told they're bad for machine readability because it means the tables change size a lot. So when you program in, you have to like go into your program and change it a lot of the time because the size of the table is changing all the time. So adding in those little columns every time we need a note on a cell isn't the best way to go now, which is why we've opted for this guidance of add a notes column and sort of say what the note is and what cells it refers to. And I'm pretty sure all screen readers, but definitely my screen reader software, it'll read out what's in the cell and then it'll read out the cell reference. So it is relatively easy for them to work out what cell they're in because it'll read out the cell reference that they're in. So that's in general what we would say, but there are a lot of asterisks in here, so it would be quite manual to put that all in. So for this example, I'm going to undo that because it denotes a new entry. What does it say? Denotes a new entry into the top 100. So it says that it was a new entry into the top 100, changing ranks since 2009. So Theodore is a new entry into the top 100 in 2009. So it went up 120 places. This has gone up 120 from what it was in 2009, but in 2009 it was a new entry. That's kind of what it's telling us here. So, and it's the same for this column. So what we're going to do in this instance then is add in a column here, and we're going to say new entry in 2018. Oh, have they done that for this weird spacing? And we're also going to put here, so new entry in 2009. And off that text there, and just check the table has extended itself. Yeah, you see this little triangle thing here, so it's extended itself now. And again, I'm going to right align that. So Yeah, so and we're just going to put in, so I'm not going to do it now because it'll take me ages. I know there is a formula way of doing it, but like I said, I'm not the hottest at Excel. But what you would put in is sort of yes or no, or leave it blank. Also, no, sorry, yes or no. Oh, you could. You don't. I have actually found out recently because we did some testing with some with the Digital Accessibility Centre, and they said, is it okay to leave cells blank if there's only sort of one reason why they're blank? So and if it's marked up as a table, so a person knows where the edge of the table is. So in this instance now, we would just need to put in yes wherever we see an asterisk. Well, there aren't many in this one. Oh, here they are. So we just need to have some sort of formula that says, oh, if there's an asterisk there, then put a yes in. And we can actually leave the rest of those blank because actually, if we fill all them in with no, which is what I've done previously in this example, what that means is when that's quite repetitive for someone listening, it would just say no, 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 which is quite annoying to listen to. So now what we sort of said is leave them blank and just put in yes for where there is an asterisk. And like I said, there very probably is some good way of doing that. And in this one, it has made them blue because of the conditional formatting thing that's going on. So I will try to change it, but I'm not going to because I will mess it up. But yeah, you need it to be in black, basically. You need to mark up all these, give them all a yes, and then make sure they're all black. And not black, sorry, selected with automatic color, not the blue. So yeah, I'm not going to go through all of them and do that, but you get the gist of what we're trying to say. And we'd also need to go through and delete all these asterisks. And once we're done on that, we don't need that note anymore, so we can get rid of it. And then kind of the last thing to do is to look at this accessibility checker. So I've got it turned on. All new versions of Excel will have this in there. And so mine says good to go. And if I click on it here, it says no accessibility issues found. You've got to treat the accessibility checker a little bit like a spelling and grammar check, which is also good to do. It's also good to do a spelling and grammar check, just to make sure. There you go. So we've got no spelling and grammar issues because, again, that makes it less readable if something is spelt wrong. And then we also want to do if you want to do the accessibility check and it isn't down here because you haven't switched it on, it's also in the review ribbon and to check accessibility. But like I said, yeah, you got to treat it a little bit like a spelling and grammar check because it will miss some things. So yeah, you have got to know the other stuff that's going on that's sort of mentioned in the guidance, but it is a good check to run. Yeah, just to see if it's flagged up. It usually flags up a lot of merge cells. That's where one of the main things it flags up. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. So I can send around a sort of before and after. Also, like I said, I'm going to take out these no's from this one to just leave the yeses in. And I haven't, they're not right aligned. So left aligned, sorry. So yeah, I'll make a couple of little edits, but this is kind of like the before and after of what it looks like, and then with the notes table there. So I can share that after the sessions. You can have a look at what's changed. And I think that's it. I don't think I've forgotten anything. So yeah, I guess we're on to the questions now.
Brilliant. Thanks, Hannah. Yes, we've got a lot of questions, which is great. So to start with, there's been a few questions around seeing the materials after. So the Excel spreadsheet, slides, recording, and the accessibility guidance you mentioned as well.
Yeah, oh, that's fine. You can share all of that.
Brilliant. There's also been a few questions around format. So this one says we're required to publish in ODS format. Okay. Will some of the formatting be lost? And there were similar questions around CSV as well.
Okay, so the ODS thing, no, everything, all the markup stuff that stays in ODS, and that is in the guidance as well, that we should be publishing ODS because that's open. Sorry, what is it for? Is it ODS? Open document spreadsheet? Yeah, open document spreadsheet. Yeah, so we're also advising that because that can be opened without any specific software, and I know that's what Gov.uk want everyone to publish in. So yeah, everything stays on. The only thing will go is freeze panes will go. So if you do have them on, in ODS, they disappear. So you can't have freeze panes on, and you'd have to take off that sentence out then. But that's the only thing that will go. CSVs, this is really interesting. So a lot of people A lot of people I speak to across digital's area sort of seem to think, and some stats people as well, have a sort of idea that CSV might be accessible by default sort of thing because it's just a text file. But actually, this makes it much less accessible when it comes to tables, because you can't keep any of that markup that lets you make sense of the table and understand how all the cells refer to each other and which one is the head row. You can't keep any of that stuff. So it actually, CSV isn't great in terms of accessibility when it comes to data tables. I have actually tested it just to make sure, because I had a feeling that was the case, but I tested it with the Digital Accessibility Centre, and they sort of said, yeah, it's not, if it's a very, very simple table, and you literally don't have any, you can't have any of these notes. So it's really difficult to have any of the notes because it makes it difficult to navigate to where the table is in a CSV. Like I said, because nothing is really marked up, doesn't really make much sense. But if you just have a really simple table like this, just the sort of header row and all the data, it might be okay. They might be able to understand, but you've got to use their memory all the time, because there's no way of like referencing back to what column they're in or what row they're in. So you have to try and sort of remember as they go through it. So it can make it quite tricky. And also sometimes they get opened on Notepad, and sometimes that might be easier for a CSV file to be opened on Notepad. But what they said is CSV is comma separated values. So it just means that everything gets separated by a comma. And what that means for a screen reader is it doesn't have it can then, depending on what settings are turned on and everything and how familiar they are with dealing with CSVs, it can literally read out the whole thing in one go. It doesn't stop because it's just everything separated by a comma. So it would read rank, name, count, change, new entry, change, new entry, and then we just go 1, Oliver, 4,132, 0, blank, 0, blank, and you know, so it just read it all out in like one massive string, which obviously isn't isn't very easy to understand for anyone. So yeah, there are some issues with CSV, and they won't be by default accessible, and they're harder to make accessible because they are so simple. You can't add any sort of markup stuff in.
Thank you. So next question we've got is regarding including footnotes on a separate worksheet. Does it make the spreadsheet less usable if a user has to flick between different sheets? And important information might also not be read if the user happens not to flick between the different tabs.
Yeah, so I've had some pushback on this. I would say I find it's easier to flick through and back rather than just scroll. I know there are quicker ways to get to the bottom, but especially when you've got a very, very long table, when they're all at the bottom, it is, I find it quite annoying them all being at the bottom. I would prefer them to all be sort of in one place so I can reference them together. So different users will have different views, and it's good to talk to your users and find out what they think about stuff like that. And if you've got very short tables, obviously them being underneath is probably fine. No, easier than flicking back and forth. So there are things to think about. The main one you've got to think about, if there's anything they need to understand before they get to a table, that's got to be above the table, because they're not going to be able to scroll down or, you know, use the commands to get down to the bottom and see the stuff. So if there's things they need to know, like that notes are used or that a certain column has a certain issue with it that you need to know about, that needs to go above the table because that comes under one of the success criterions in the guidance. If it's just general notes, like these notes are, these rankings have been produced using the exact spelling of the name, it's not necessarily a fail if they're under the table. They can be missed by some people because they might not know they're there. If you say at the top, maybe you can say at the top, notes are presented underneath the table. There is one blank row between the table and where the notes are. Like in the same way I've said here, some cells refer to notes from we found in the notes worksheet. So if you kind of tell them where they are, that's probably one thing that would make it more accessible. And also, like I said, you just have to be careful with the formatting, because I know on some of them, yeah, they like, it almost has like a subhead. There's so many notes that they have subheadings. So you just have to be a little bit careful with things, think about things a bit more. So it's just easier to just put them in a notes table, because then there's less sort of picky things to think about in terms of accessibility.
Great. Next question. What would you write in the title if you had 8 notes, for example?
Oh, wait, yeah, okay. If you've got 8, so I've kind of been told you have to put them in like this. You can't put note. Initially, I was saying just put note 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But they've told me in terms of machine reading, if someone's adapting this for machines to read, you have to list them all out like that. You can't just put yeah, you can't just put like note 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But if you've got 8 notes in your title, I don't know. I think you kind of maybe need to think a bit about that. That's quite extreme. So yeah, maybe think about how you present in your notes a bit if you've got 8.
Okay. And what would you use in place of an asterisk for indicating disclosure control if it won't be read out?
Okay, so we have changed the guidance on what symbols to use in tables. So we've updated it to not include symbols, basically. So now what is called now using symbols in shorthand in tables, and that kind of introduces why we can't use symbols anymore in tables, unless they're like in a code or something that we can't change. And it does also talk a little bit about, there are some symbols, talked a little bit about, oh, it's got, you know, both places. There are a few that are recognisable, but they're none that we use in stats in general. So we used to use asterisks for statistical significance, I think, and we used to use a little cross to mean something else. So what I've done is sort of gone through and used shorthand instead, which is basically letters. And I know there are going to be some situations where it's going to be annoying to use letters, but we need to meet the legal accessibility guidelines, and the letters will, whereas the symbols won't. But that does go into it in a lot more detail. So it's fine if they're in titles, in column headings, row labels, or within empty cells, then using them is fine. It doesn't really mess up any of the usability of the spreadsheet. But when they've got to go in cells with the data, like these ones are, these asterisks are in the cell with the data. And why that messes up usability is, it wouldn't make sense for this column, but say you had a column you wanted to sum it. Excel ignores the asterisk and includes that number in the sum. If you've got a letter in there, it won't ignore it anymore. It'll, it will ignore the whole cell. So it'll ignore that whole number if I had, for example, in your, say, I don't know, a V to mean something. Now if I sum that, it'll ignore the 111, which is obviously not great. So we don't really want to put shorthand in cells with data, but in general, we don't want to put any sort of symbol or shorthand in the cells with the data, which is why we have this thing of having the extra notes column instead of having sort of note markers in the cell with the data. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. I can't remember what the actual question was now. But oh yeah, asterisk. So yeah, if you're going to use symbols or switching from using symbols, we have put together this new guidance on what shorthand should be used in certain situations, and I am planning on sending that out for feedback. So if you're interested in receiving that, I'll include it with the other resources we send out, because we do need some feedback on that update. So that guidance.
Great, thank you. So next question. Is there a way of hiding cells or formulas without causing accessibility issues, e.g. columns for lookups that you don't want the users to see?
Well, I don't think you should be publishing formulas. Generally, there's something to do with them being a security risk. So depending on what the spreadsheet you're publishing is being used for, I know I have spoken to someone in a very specific, something to do with trains and railways, at a very specific spreadsheet they were putting out that needed to have formulas in it. Generally, we say don't put the formulas in because, like I said, this is a security risk issue and they can be confusing for accessibility issues. I'm not sure, because see, I'm not sure if say this column was hidden, column C was hidden, I don't know if a screen reader's reading it, whether it would still read it out, or whether it would tell them it's hidden, or whether it would just skip it. So I'm not entirely sure what a screen reader would do with it. So in general, it's not good to hide. Or if you have hidden something, you would definitely need to mention it here. You just need to say something is hidden. If you don't want them to see it at all, though, I would say probably don't have a different version of the spreadsheet that you publish if you don't want any users to see it. Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure what the correct answer is there, but if you can not publish it, then don't publish it.
So next question is there guidance on placement of logo images?
Okay, well, that comes in a non-text content. So, I mean, legally, if you just want to give it alt text, you can just give it alt text, and legally that should help you pass the regs. But from a purely accessibility point of view, when it makes them accessible, it is much more accessible to just write in the name of the department and not have the logo. So really think about whether you need the logo. The problem is if they're placed if they're in the wrong place, it's very difficult to give very, very specific advice. But if they're placed in the wrong place, they can obscure information and they can make navigation really weird. Because say it was placed up here, then it makes, like on a cover sheet, say it was placed in the top left, like all the cells behind it are blank. So when someone's going through, it doesn't think there's anything there. If a screen reader's reading it out, screen reader doesn't really, I'm not sure how it gets the logo either because it's an image. I'm not really sure. You'd have to go through like the elements of the page. It's just a pain basically. If you are going to have them in there, put them somewhere over here. So they're out of the way of any sort of content. Like on a cover sheet, you might have everything on a cover sheet to sort of be limited to column A, because that's how it's generally navigated through, and put logos just away from any other content so it can't disrupt any sort of navigation. But really, I'd say, do you really need it, or can you just put the name of the department in?
Thank you. So the next one is asking, so you can't have blank rows in between rows with content?
No, generally don't do that because it's not like absolutely impossible to make that accessible, because if you've marked it up as a table, so say I wanted to split up the rankings of 10 for some reason, if I've marked this up as a table, someone using a screen reader knows that isn't the end of the table because the screen reader would read out edge of table. So you can put them in if you really want to, but we'd say avoid them because they can cause confusion, just having random blank rows. It's better if you want to, like for example, in that situation, if you wanted to split out the 10s, it's better just to use the column height rather than putting in a blank row, because it can make navigation confusing.
Okay. The next question, so we have touched on asterisks a little bit, but this one says, we use asterisks to denote suppressed data. Are there particular symbols you recommend we consider instead, or a completely different approach?
Yeah, so that goes back to this. So we're trying to also, when this was published, it was quite a long time ago, and I don't think it was promoted massively. The idea is that we harmonise the way symbols are used across government. So I think we've already used two reasons for using asterisks, and actually on the original piece of this guidance, asterisks were meant to be used to denote statistical significance. So it's just like all different government departments are using the same symbols to mean loads of different things, which is really confusing if you go in between different, downloading statistics from different departments. So we want everyone to sort of use the same shorthand to mean the same things, which is part of the reason why, which was the main reason this guidance was published in the first place. And now it's been updated. There is like a certain shorthand for each sort of common situation. So I think suppression, I think it came under confidential. Yeah, so in previous standard, there was a separate category for suppression, discussion with the statistical disclosure unit. Suppression might be for confidentiality or low reliability, and they're both separately identified. So yeah, just take a look at that guidance and see kind of what's the best shorthand to use for each situation.
Great. The next question is, are you working with government departments to update in-house guidance for spreadsheets? Also, my sister's dyslexic and uses colour filters with everything she can on her laptop, and I didn't know about the colouring text in automatic rather than black, so thank you, that was super useful.
Thanks. Well, I had that from someone in government digital service who uses those colours for a vision impairment. So yeah, it was really good. I never knew about that either, that it was so important to use automatic and not black. So it is a really useful thing. It's actually a AAA standard, but yes, it's good to know because it's a really easy thing to just add in. It doesn't really make much difference to anyone. What was the question? Sorry, Louise.
Are you working with government departments to update their guidance for spreadsheets?
At the moment, we've just got the guidance there and we're still waiting for the official sign off. I have been talking to people across various government departments, but we'll be, when it finally sort of officially gets published on the GSS website and is officially there, then we will promote it sort of directly with each department through the web dissemination champions. That's how we sort of get stuff out to the departments, and probably through the presentation champions as well. But yeah, I'm happy to work with any of the teams that need help implementing it, which is part of the reason why we're doing these demos, and hopefully we'll do a few more of the demos in the coming months.
Right, so the next question is it okay to remove the default grid lines, or should these be shown?
The only way I know to get rid of the default, these I'm assuming means these ones. The only way I know is to put a background fill in. Oh, maybe you can't. Oh, can you go to view and turn them off? Okay, yeah. So there's nothing in the regs to say you need to have the grid lines there. So if you prefer them not to be there, you can switch them off. But yeah, it's just kind of, I think that's kind of down to preference. It's not really, I prefer them there, but I guess someone can turn them on and off if they want to. But yeah, if you want to turn them off and publish it like that, then that's fine.
Cool. Is there accessibility guidance for other programs like SharePoint, Power BI, and Word docs?
So Word docs are covered in, so if I go to the GSS website, in here, we've got a section on making document formats accessible. So I don't talk too much about PDFs, but there's a little bit more about making Word docs. And obviously this is going to be updated when the spreadsheet guidance gets published. But yeah, there's advice in there for making Word docs accessible. We are going to start looking a little bit more, hopefully in the future, at dashboard stuff. So our Shiny and Power BI, from what I know, like I don't know a lot about them, I haven't worked much on dashboards, but from what I've heard, it's quite difficult to make Power BI accessible. I think our Shiny ones are ones you create yourself, sort of on HTML. I think they're easier to make accessible. Power BI is quite tricky. What was the other one, Louise? Sorry, Power BI and SharePoint.
SharePoint.
Oh, I don't know anything about making SharePoint accessible, sorry. I try to stay away from SharePoint as much as I can.
So the next question, in reference to the change to cell A1, what do you do if you have 3 smaller tables in one worksheet?
Okay, so we've got in here, in the spreadsheet guidance, there's a whole section on worksheets with multiple tables. So generally, you should avoid publishing worksheets with multiple tables. They're difficult, they can be difficult to navigate, and they're not great for machine readability. But I have written guidance on what to do when working with multiple tables on a spreadsheet and a worksheet. And also in the example of accessible spreadsheet, which is here, so I've sort of taken about 8 of the tabs, I think, or maybe less, 4 of the tabs off the labour market, and I made them accessible. And if you take a quick look at that, when it loads up, it's quite big. What I've done there is you sort of, instead of calling each worksheet table 1, you call each worksheet worksheet 1, worksheet 2. So I think it's this one. Yeah, so this one we've got worksheet 2. So they're all called worksheet now instead of table. And then you just say in here, this worksheet contains 8 tables, but next to other horizontally with 1 blank column in between each table. So you give a really good instruction of how they're laid out. Each table applies for a different age group. And now this is a headings 1. And now each table has its own heading, which is tagged as a headings 2. And that means if someone, so there's, I think it's about 2D, I think it goes up to 2G, I think. It's quite a lot of different age groups there. So what that does then, if someone's tabbing through the headings on a page, it can see all these headings. Okay, so this is the name. This is the overall worksheet name. And then these are the names of all the tables. So as long as everything's sort of set up and tagged correctly, then it is possible to put them on, and you've told them how they're laid out. It is possible for multiple tables, but that's the kind of thing you need to think about.
Thank you. Next question. When you say no italics, we were told for percentages we should put them in italics and not put the percentage sign next to the number, but in the heading. Is this still the case, or what should be done?
I don't know where that advice would have come from. I don't know if it's like a departmental thing. I mean, italics do not fail the accessibility regs. They're just bad practice. Like, they're not specifically mentioned. But you could argue that they're mentioned under the guidance is just readable. So that makes italics make things less readable for people with dyslexia. So you could argue that it comes under that guideline. So that's the thing. They're not, some of the success criterion in the guidelines are very, very specific, but the overall guidelines are not particularly specific. So it's all down to sort of interpretation. So I wouldn't necessarily mean that necessarily means it's a fail, but it's not best practice. Best practice would be just to put percentage as the unit in the column heading, and then just leave them and don't put them italic.
Thanks, Hannah. So the next question is more of a comment referring back to notes in separate pages. So previous visualization, not accessibility guidance, included not having notes on a separate page in case the table gets copied or taken out of context. So it's interesting that this advises having notes on a separate page tab.
Yeah, I know about that one. But the thing is, that's what we sort of say. So this it says up here, it says that some cells refer to notes from the notes worksheet. So you're flagging up there are notes and they are on the notes worksheet. So, because I mean, if you're just going to copy and paste the table, it doesn't matter if the notes are underneath because they're not part of the table anyway. So that can still be missed. So I am aware that that's been said before, but as long as you're sort of saying up here, making it really clear that there are notes and the notes are very clearly marked and you've said where they are, then you're giving enough information to the person that if you copy and paste this table, it's very clear there are notes that need to be referred to and what number they are. So that danger is less. The danger of someone lifting the table and not they might not copy over the notes, but it's still really obvious that there are notes needed for that data.
Okay. Next question is, does government or the department have access to a screen reader so we can check our work is accessible?
All government departments should be able to install screen reader software on your computers because you might have people working with you who need that software. So it is really useful. It's hard. I'm trying to learn to use it because obviously I don't know how to use it as properly as somebody who uses a screen reader all the time would. But yeah, if you can get hold of it, you should definitely be able to ask your IT department, can you install whatever screen reader software the department uses on my computer so that I can test stuff. Yeah.
Fab. So the next question, if you have a long table title, do you just let it run across the page on one row?
Yeah, I know. So this is something that's not great. To let it run across the table in one row isn't great because you might have to horizontally scroll. So yeah, it can. So if you have that situation and the description is very long, I don't know if there's any in. I mean, that one's quite long and they aren't particularly short. If you do have that situation, I guess then you could argue to put the geographical and time period information underneath. You could then split it up. It's just important though that the cell A1 is telling them what's on this page. So you might want to just put the description there and then put some of the other information. And so you'd put like top 100 names for baby boys, and then you put this data refers to England and Wales in 2019 underneath. So that in that situation, you want to avoid horizontal scrolling because that's not great for anyone.
Great. Next question is, not all the tables are as simple as this one. What about tables that have subheadings in the table?
Yeah, so Excel can only mark up, and on all HTML tables really, I know they do find ways around it on ONS website, but can only really mark up one row as a header row. So it's important for machine readability as well as accessibility because they basically work on the same sort of technology. So screen reader technology is kind of linked to the sort of programming technology that's used for machines to read data sets. So you really need to try and restrict it to one header row. What I've done here, so in this one, then this is the sort of, let's pick an easier one. This is the header row, and then really this is also a subheading row because it's the code. So you could put the code in, I guess you could fit it in there underneath if you really want to do it. But if you want to keep it separate, you can sort of have a subheading row, but you just need to, it's when it gets really difficult is when like these are merged. This is all one thing, and then these are three separate things underneath, and you've got a sort of subheading. And what you need to do then is you just need to make them three individual headings. I can't think of an example now, but say this was like these three were like United Kingdom, United Kingdom, and then you had like England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. You'd have to put you just have to put England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. I can't really think of an example, but you know what I mean? That you can get away with some subheadings but you still need to have, you can't have merged cells. So you sort of need to make them, each column needs a specific heading, which can make things quite wordy. I do understand that. But it's only what the technology can understand as the heading for that column. There's Excel, the sort of software, any sort of technology at the moment doesn't let you tag more than one row as a heading row. I was trying it yesterday, looking at an ONS release that had subheadings in the table with my screen reader software, and if you try that out, it is so confusing when there are subheadings, because it doesn't really know where to go in the table. It doesn't know what to read out in the table. So yeah, they do just make things really confusing for assistive tech.
Thanks, Anna. Next we have been changing the format of spreadsheets from Excel to ODS. Unfortunately, customers are saying they can't open ODS, particularly if using a Mac operating system. What is the guidance on this?
Yeah, so this is kind of something to argue with GDS, because this kind of come from them. And I'm assuming if you've been pushed over to using ODS, then it's you probably could publish it on gov.uk. So I'm aware that there have been issues here with people weirdly, ironically, not being able to open ODS. The Mac seems to have a problem with it. I have asked them about it, and they've sort of come back to me and sort of said, oh, there is a way they can be opened. There's always a way, but I mean, you need to give people whatever's easier. So yeah, I'm not an expert on the formats. In general, the open formats are better than non-open formats, but I know there are issues with Mac things. So if you publish on gov.uk, that's something you kind of need to take up with them, and they should allow you to publish 2 versions, but I know that isn't always the easiest thing to do. You should be able to publish an Excel and an ODS, really, if that's what your users need. But how easy that is, I don't know, in terms of publishing.
Thank you. So the next question is from James and says, are there plans to roll out training alongside the guidance? If everyone should be following this guidance, then perhaps the training could be mandatory. This needs to be embedded into our culture, so it's not just a handful of people championing accessibility.
Yeah, I'm not planning on doing training. I'm planning on doing these demos, like I said, sort of maybe once a month doing the demos, because we have found that when we do train, well, first of all, I haven't got the resource to do mandatory training for the whole of the GSS on the analysis function, so I'd have to have a lot more people working with me, and I don't know if that's going to happen. But I do agree, definitely, it needs to be embedded. So at the moment, the approach we're taking is to do the demonstrations and to promote the guidance through the demonstrations, and also to be here to work through the web dissemination champions, and to also be here to answer questions about specific spreadsheets if there are issues. But yeah, I guess that's for someone more senior to decide if you want to make it mandatory and sort of push people much more into following this, then, because it is legislation. That's the kind of decision kind of needs to be made from a more senior level than me.
So next question, with the footnote references, would you recommend putting them all at the end of the sentence rather than next to the word or part of the sentence that it relates to?
Yeah, I know I moved it over to the end. I generally prefer them being on the end. I think it looks a bit neater, but there's no reason why they can't go next to the bit of the sentence that they refer to.
Thank you. I have a document which has lots of small tables for different areas in England. What are the rules for multiple tables?
Yes, that kind of goes back to that section I said about my tables. And I know if that's the thing, like sort of what they call small multiples and stuff like that, where they might be needed, which is why I was kind of maybe discussing taking this section out completely, but why I sort of left it in, because I know there are situations where you need multiple tables on a tab. So yeah, that's just the things you need to think about. It's like I said before about making sure all the headings are marked up correctly and all the tables are inserted as tables, then you should be okay. And as long as you described how they're laid out, it should be fine in terms of accessibility to do that. But machine readability won't like it. The programmers don't like it. Just bear that in mind.
Next question, does the screen reader read down the columns or across the rows? Down the columns would make it hard to understand anything.
Down the columns. What's that mean, down? Well, anyway, I think it can read it whatever way the person wants it to read it. So it just depends how they move along the table, really. And if they want to go down like that, or want to go, once it knows it's in the table, it should read out like cell. It shouldn't just read out as a string. It's only for the CSV where it would read out as a string all in one go. Unless I suppose they have specific settings on. Otherwise, they sort of go through a table as they wish to. So yeah, it can do either. Gives the answer there.
Great. Is it okay to colour cells, e.g. the header row, as long as contrast with text is okay?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't advise it. I'd say keep things simple, but as long as you check the color contrast, and like I said, because it won't fail then, as long as you check the color contrast, it won't fail. But like, remember I said that thing about the automatic color and the background color being no fill, and then it taking on the automatic color settings. If you put a fill, it won't be able to take on a person's automatic color settings, so they won't be able to read it. But that is a AAA, so it won't fail illegal, but it does. It will have issues for people who have got their sort of settings on to take on what the settings they need to be able to read it. So it's just to bear that in mind. It's not best practice.
Thank you. Do we know numbers of people who access tables or publications via screen reader or other applications?
So no, we don't know numbers. But I think also that would be very skewed by the fact that we have not created tables that are easy for them to read. So I know from the people I've sent spreadsheets that I've adapted, that labour market one that I sort of made accessible, I sent that over to the Digital Accessibility Centre and asked them to test it with their, they've got testers who are visually impaired and who use assistive technology. And they said, I've never been able to read a spreadsheet before. So this was really great. It's the first spreadsheet I've ever been able to read. So you wouldn't have much you wouldn't have a lot of numbers of people accessing them as spreadsheets screen readers because they haven't been able to. And often, I know on Gov.uk they have that button that says, "Oh, request an accessible version of this," but often that button isn't there. And sometimes on some websites, not on Gov.uk, but on other websites, when there is something that says how to request an accessible version, sometimes that button isn't accessible. So it's just really difficult for people who need extra things to, so we don't have any good numbers on them because it's been very difficult for them to tell us what they need.
Thanks, Hannah. Next question is, you haven't covered alternative text. Is this also crucial to add to any table in a spreadsheet?
Yeah, so you can, why does it come up now? I haven't done it for so long. You can add, there is a way to add alternative text onto a table, but you don't need to. I can't remember to do it now, but there is a way to do it. But you don't need to, because you've marked it up as a table, it's all there and it's fine. You don't need to give the alternative text for the table. So sometimes I've noticed sometimes on other versions I've worked on, the accessibility checker flags that up and says the table doesn't have alternative text, but it doesn't do it anymore. But even if it does, you don't need to put the alternative text in for the table if it's marked up correctly as a table. Yeah, so if it does flag that up, you can ignore it. And then anyway, if you save an ODS, the alt text for the table, even if you have put it in, that gets removed. So yeah, that's the answer there. Don't worry about it.
Thank you. This might have been covered, but how do you format tables with headers that run across multiple rows?
Yeah, I think it was covered in the sort of subheading things, isn't it? So you can do it, but it's not best practice to do it, and it can make the navigation really difficult. So best, we only really want to have one header row. That will mean rewriting some tables, which I understand is not easy.
Thank you. So it may be beyond the scope of this session, but I have a few macro-heavy spreadsheets. Is there an agreement yet on how to deal with these? And then the macros can't be removed.
Yeah, so it's very, very difficult to make macros accessible. I've also been told by the security team that they pose a security risk. I don't really understand that fully, but they don't want us to publish macros, in S anyway, the security team here. So yeah, I can't give you a lot of guidance on them, apart from they're very tricky to ensure. You might need to do your own sort of testing with someone in terms of accessibility, because they're very difficult to make sure, and it's also the security thing, so we haven't looked into it too much, sorry.
The next question is there a way that teams are able to submit spreadsheets to be reviewed before publishing to help improve accessibility?
Yeah, I'm happy. I mean, I don't want to be completely overwhelmed, but yeah, at the moment, I'm happy if you've got one you want me to look at. or if you think you've worked on one and you just want me to sort of have a quick look at it and give you some feedback on it, then that's fine as well. I can do that. I'm happy. Just contact me on that. That'd be fine. And also on the macros one, if you want me to have a look at that one you've got and the sort of reasons you need macros, I'm happy for you to email me that, and I can look into a few.
Great. Next question is it recommended that we don't use a white background fill?
Yeah. Try avoid that. Like I say, so you've got the grid lines thing, and then there was that thing where you take off the grid lines, which essentially gives it a white background. Don't put it on.
Great. And then we've got a comment from James that says, in relation to the screen reader question, Windows has a built-in screen reading app called Narrator.
Oh, okay. I don't know if that's available on everyone's computer, and it might not be the one that's most commonly used. I don't know, because maybe I don't know how like advanced it is. So maybe it'd probably still be very good for check-in, but yeah, just be aware that it's not one of the ones I've heard of. So JAWS and NVDA, the ones I've heard of that are most commonly used, and they're all slightly different. So just be aware of that.
Okay. Next question is it safe to say that to make tables suitable for screen readers, it means that you won't be able to have a visually pleasing table that has been the standard for so long? Sorry, I lost the question there. For example, notes, blank rows, symbols.
Okay, so this kind of depends on what you mean by visually pleasing. Yeah, they are going to have to look a little bit different. But yeah, I think for a long time we designed spreadsheets for print, and we kind of need to get away from that a little bit. But yeah, they are going to look different. There isn't really a way of making them good for machines to read, good for accessibility, as good for usability. Yeah, and still look the way they look now. But you can get them nearer than you think, I think.
Thank you. So
for example, sorry, Louise. Yeah, it's Louise. Example, like I said about blank rows and stuff, like spacing a lot of it can be achieved with like column width and row height, and like taking the grid lines off can make it again get to a bit nearer maybe than it was. There's lots of stuff you can do to make it look more like you're used to them looking.
So, oh, sorry. Sorry, the questions are jumping. Okay, the next one. So we had a dyslexic user state that Arial wasn't a very accessible font for them when we showed them a spreadsheet. What's a better one for accessibility?
Oh, I don't know. Online, it just says to use the sans serif ones, and Arial is one of the most common ones. Calibri, again, I haven't seen any. I mean, maybe that certain dyslexic people prefer different ones, but yeah, the sort of all the guidance I've read doesn't say that Arial isn't good to use. So I'm not. It just says the thing about the sans serif. So yeah, sorry.
Thank you. The next question is from Zoe, who says, is there any way of highlighting that a spreadsheet is designed to be read by people, or is long form data for machine readability? Having information at the top of a spreadsheet often needs to be removed through coding to be imported, so it would be useful to highlight somewhere.
I guess that would be on the link on the web page that the links are on. So if you've got one sort of link to download, it'd usually be a CSV, wouldn't it, if it's for machines to read? I guess we'd need to mention that in the link there, but it would all kind of depend on your publishing data, and from the sort of the programmers and coders I sort of work with, I mean, they would prefer machine readability stuff, and ideally it would be released through an API or some sort of like stat explore to something like that, customize my data tool, and not through a spreadsheet. So if you are making them specifically for machines to read, it's probably better to release them in a slightly different way. The advice I've given in this guidance is just related to making it as easy as possible to adapt a spreadsheet to make it machine readable. And that's again another reason why it's good to put the stuff above the table and below, because they told me that it's easier if they know all the information's above the table and they need to adapt the spreadsheet to make it machine readable. They can easily just delete everything, delete all the bits they don't want before they feed it into their program. So the guidance is kind of like, this is the stuff you do to make it easy to adapt for machine readability. But if you want to like publish data that is specifically for machines to read, you should be doing it through a different means and not publishing a spreadsheet at all. if that makes sense.
Thank you. Next question. Is there a problem with having a border of empty cells in column A? It just looks a bit cramped, and the rank numbers could be confused with the cell row numbers.
Yeah, there's a massive problem with having with putting a column in, because like I said, you sort of navigate down, and if they don't hit the table there because it's the blank column, they not necessarily know where to go. It just makes navigation really confusing. We definitely want things to be, all tables to be positioned to the left of the worksheet. You mean if you think that's going to be a problem, it's not a hard and fast rule that you have to left align. You can right align it and move it over if you think that's going to be an issue. It's more important that you don't put a blank column in column A. It's like the most important column in every worksheet.
Great. Next question is, our current house style is to contain contact details and updated dates at the top. Do they belong in a metadata tab?
I'd say if the contact details are the same for every tab, and you've got like 20 tabs in your spreadsheet, just put them in the cover sheet. I wouldn't say you need to put them in every single tab. If they're different for every table, or for lots of different tables, lots of different contacts, then yeah, put them at the top if you think they're important to put in each one. But otherwise, I'd say yeah, just put them on the cover sheet.
Next question. Is there a way of using subtitles in column headings, or would we have to create separate tables for subgroups?
Yeah, I think that's the same question as before.
Oh, sorry.
So it's fine. There is a way. I mean, you have to sort of fiddle around with a bit, but the best practice way of doing it is to just, you don't want subtitles. You want to have one header row.
Okay, and then last question, given time. If you use a C to suppress information, do you have to explain what the C means somewhere in the spreadsheet?
Yeah, so that is outlined on in there on layout. Oh, it should be in there, shouldn't it? Where do I put it in there? Oh, where to put it? Should be in there, shouldn't it? So I don't think I have to move that over, but it's definitely in the spreadsheet guidance where I've sort of said using shorthand. Where is it? It is used somewhere. Sorry, it's very long. Oh, here we go. If you do need to use letters as shorthand because of visual clutter, so that means you can't put the whole word. If you've got a very small table, you can put the whole word in, so you can put confidential in if you want to do. But if that is going to cause too much visual clutter, then you're going to need to use letters as shorthand. Make sure to present a key to what these letters mean above the table and cell in column A. And this ensures the user is made aware of the key before coming to the table. So I don't know if I've got it in any of these. Oh, it must be in the end one on the left blank now. Yeah, there is an example on in here though. Some example, yeah. So there's that one shows the kind of thing you'd expect to have. So you'd have a little sentence that says there. Yeah, some shorthand is used in the table. E equals estimated, F forecast, P provisional. That's the kind of way we would lay it out.
Brilliant. We'll finish there. Thank you, Hannah. And thanks everyone for attending today's session. Remember to get involved with the rest of the events happening during Analysis in Government Month. I'm popping a link now in the announcements to the Eventbrite page. You can also find out more on gov.uk/government analysis function, and you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter @gov_analysis. If you haven't already, please also subscribe to the analysis function newsletter. You can do that by emailing us at analysis.function@ons.gov.uk. Thanks very much and have a lovely rest of the day.
Thank you.